Who is the G8? We sort of know who the countries are, but really, who are they and what are some interesting facts about the G8? Well, they're 8 of the 12 top-ranked leading export countries, so exporting their goods around the world. 6 of the top-ranked countries with the largest gold reserves. 8 of the 11 top-ranked economies by nominal GDP. There are 5 countries with GDP per capita above US $40,000 a year, which is extraordinary. And there are 4 out of the 9 countries that have nuclear weapons, which is another little fact that I came across. They are a funny old bunch. It's missing some of the other key economies, which I'm sure you're aware of. Brazil, China, India, some of the very important economies that are impacting on the world and on global governance today. It started out in 1975 as a little club of 6 countries, powerful countries, following the oil crisis, and Canada joined a year later, and then Russia joined in '98, significantly later. Some people say that Russia is a bit of an anomaly there, and maybe that discussion will come out throughout the day. What power do they have? It feels a bit outdated. It feels a bit like it should have been kicked into the long grass a very long time ago. Unfortunately, they do have a fair bit of power. They tend to export their ideas around the world, and that's why the corporate dream is so very important as part of the title of this session. The G8 governments, in a very untransparent fashion, have the ear of those corporations. And they design and they concoct and they export those policies that are of importance to those companies. It's become an entity that actually fails to look at many of the issues on their own shores. So everything that's happened in the last few years, since the last time the G8 was here, global economic meltdown, ongoing climate crises, collapse of the euro, they kind of buried their head in the sand and virtually ignored. Instead, they say they want to tackle global poverty. But how do they do this? Well, they do it in a very outmoded, old-fashioned way that is as far from global justice, actually, as you can get. On the agenda this year, a week ago, they had the Hunger Summit. They've talked about hunger in Africa and how they're going to solve that by giving lots of money to private companies, and we're going to hear a bit more about that, I think, from Raj, so I won't go into the details of that. They want to kickstart trade. Now, as a long-standing trade campaigner, WDM has been campaigning on trade issues for many, many years now. I think we should take heart that the fact that since Seattle, global trade talks have virtually been stalled. But what's risen up in their place is bilateral trade talks. And what the G8 wants to kick off next week is an EU-US trade deal that actually is very worrying, because what will come out of that trade deal is something that again will be exported around the world. They want to enable investors to sue countries. This could be, and this is already starting to happen in North America. We had investors suing the Ontario government because it wanted to subsidize its renewable energy program, and that was considered to be illegal. We need to be concerned about these investor-to-state settlement disputes, but that's what's being discussed on the agenda. It's about trade, it's about opening up global trade, and it's about kickstarting the round in Bali, the meeting later this year. They're talking about transparency. Well, coming from some of the most untransparent governments in the world, that's something that we need to question. How much transparency do they have about the doings of their businesses and with people, the lobbying activities and the decisions that are made within the borders of their own countries within the G8? And lastly, tax. And I will say, I think we should be pleased that there is discussion about global tax. There's discussion about tax havens, and I think that's a testament to campaigners from a number of organizations across the UK and around the world. What we need to be concerned of is while they're trying to make payments around tax, or where tax havens are more transparent, many of the G8 governments are also trying to reduce the amount of tax that companies pay. So it's effectively giving with one hand and taking with the other. George Osborne in this country has certainly been one of the biggest opponents to a global financial transaction tax. So they pay lip service to a lot, but are they really practicing these things themselves in a just way? Certainly not. So As I said, the G8 really seems to harken back to a bygone era, and we really need to say goodbye to it and come up with an alternative. And throughout the day, I'm going to be asking you what you think we should have instead, and I'll be coming to you and asking you questions.